Hi, so here we are today with this demo lecture. We're going to talk about in this lecture about the different forms of free weight training. Okay. So when we talk about free weight training, what is free attached to weight training? Okay. Or what's free weights? So free weights are basically things like the bar here or like this dumbbell. Okay. They are basically weights which are not attached to any cable or not attached to any machine. Okay, so you can basically take this and you can move it all around. You can bring it up here, here, up anyway. So that's a free weight. Now, in comparison, we'll of course be doing a separate demo lecture on about machines as well, and you'll notice that machines have certain specialities about them and certain kind of points which we need to take note of. So free weights, if we look at it, mainly there's your barbells. Okay, a barbell is a long bar, okay, which you load weights on the sides, and then you do exercises. And then the other aspect which is common is dumbbells, right? So the third aspect that comes in is things like kettlebells, which are used with a bit more velocity. There's a bit more sort of momentum used in those lifts. But the general standard which comes about weight training is these two. Now, if we have to look at a barbell, okay, what is the difference between a barbell and dumbbells? Like, why not that we use only barbells, or why not use only dumbbells? Is one better than the other? No, they both have their own importance. So a barbell has the advantage that you can lift a lot more weight compared to dumbbells. So somebody who can lift maybe with each arm holding dumbbells, lift an X amount of weight, barbells will obviously be a lot more. The reason being that the weight is connected together, the arms are pushing together or the legs are pushing together when you're doing barbell exercises. Okay, so that's the very reason why in sports like weightlifting, powerlifting especially, there's barbells that are used for the weights and not dumbbells. So one advantage that you can use more weight. Second advantage of using barbells is that you can use it generally at a much higher speed compared to this. That's why again from an Olympic lifting point of view, there's a barbell. Now what's the advantage of this? We'll be getting to it, but the fact that you get greater range. Okay, you get greater range of motion when the weight is in two hands. You can move it in an arc, which is normally not possible by doing a barbell. Okay, so these become the main sort of differences between the two. Now, what's the advantage of a barbell over maybe if we were doing this exercise on a machine? Okay, so one is from a practical point of view, this is cheaper, right? It's much cheaper to have a barbell and then move it. The second advantage is that space-wise, this takes less space. Okay, you don't need a huge machine which is required. Second is this is more real life. So when you have to carry, say, your groceries, or especially in sport, when you're going to carry a shot put and you're going to throw that shot put, right? This mimics more that because this is not attached to any machine. The range is not fixed. So these become the main sort of differences, okay, between training with a machine and this. Now, what are the, maybe we can say not disadvantages, but what are the drawbacks that we have to keep in mind? One is that these require technique. So free weight training requires a lot more technique learning, and especially if you're going to lift heavy weights, you need somebody else to spot for you, meaning somebody to balance and give you the weights. Because if something goes wrong, the weights can fall on you or many other things. So important to note that when you do free weight training, technique becomes important. On machines, it is easier for even beginners to do. So these becomes the differences between these two. So what we'll be doing is we'll be going through different lifts. The main lifts I'll be showing and the variations of it. So obviously this demo lecture is not enough to teach you all the exercises and discuss everything that's possible with weights. It will cover the main lifts. Okay. So one becomes the squat, the bench press, the deadlift, which is part of powerlifting as a sport. And then we'll be doing maybe the shoulder press, bent over barbell rows, and bicep curls, and maybe an exercise for the triceps. And then we'll show you the different variations, the different grips also that can be done. So let's begin with the exercises. So now moving to doing a bench press, okay, using optimal form to do a bench press. So the first thing to realize when it comes to using a bench press, okay, is that as you're lifting, you're not just lifting with your arms, you would be lifting with literally the whole body. You want to engage your core as well, your legs too, right? So first thing to realize while doing it with a barbell is that you want to retract your shoulder blades so that there's a retraction and there's connection. Okay, now why do we do retraction? It's because when the scapulae behind, when they're retracted, they are much more stabilized for the humerus to move in much more controlled fashion compared to being here. Okay, so how does retraction happen? Think of it this way. If you are going to look at it from behind and there's a bench here, I need to be thinking of getting the shoulder blades back and down. Okay, so it is not this here, it is more from here, squeeze back and down. So literally when you're doing this, the first action is to get onto the bench, squeeze your back, and you can almost think of as if you want to twist and break the bar. So everything locks in, okay, you're nicely locked in, stable, bar comes down, bar goes up. That's as simple as it can be. But the trick is to make sure that you're completely tight and your whole body stays really connected. So let me demonstrate this in a simple way. So if I'm lying down, okay, and this is the position I am in, so you don't want to be holding the bar here. The first thing to do is get your shoulders down, okay, you get them into downward rotation and retraction, so it's nice and tight. Okay, from here, if I have the bar, I'll be going down to the level of generally the nipples. That is where you ideally touch. Okay, that's the point from where you go back up. Now where do you bring it higher? Do you bring it here? It will give you a bit greater stretch in the pectoralis major, but you don't want to because it's not that great from shoulder stability point of view. Okay, the shoulder capsule is in a much weaker position here than here, so it's much better here. So just to give a simple demo, first thing is to make sure that the grip on the bar is equal. Most of these bars will have a marking, so make sure you measure it, okay, in such a way that your hands, when they come down, you want your wrist to be above the elbow. So if you ask how wide should it be, for my height and for my arm length, this is what you want. Okay, straight line from here, straight line up. So it's like a spear. Think like a spear goes up, spear comes down. It is not this. You don't want this force, nor do you want this force, unless you're doing a close grip bench press where the elbows are tucked in. But otherwise, a standard bench press comes here and it's straight line up, straight line down. Okay, so let's do a demo for this. You get a grip, assuming there's weight on this. Now I've retracted my shoulder blades. Okay, I've kept my glutes engaged as well. And from here, it's a tight move down, tight move up. Okay, tight move down, tight move up. 1, 2. Okay, 1, 2. So as you can see, it's as straight as possible. Okay, what you don't want is this. This is what you don't want. You don't want the bar to travel in an S shape or as a C curve. You want it from here straight, boom, down, boom, down. Okay, so this becomes important. Now if we look at probably what not to do. What not to do would be this. Your back is relaxed, you've got a close grip and you're just doing this. Okay, now here you can see there's no stability. Okay, your scapulae are not retracted, it's just going all over the place. Okay, of course another wrong thing would be if you go with maybe a wrong grip and then pushing here. Okay, so not done. So if you're doing it, always tight. Okay, you have to be doing it as a full body motion. You can see my glutes are engaged, my feet are pressing into the floor, and a small trick here can be that as you push, you can push your feet into the ground. So feet into the ground. So as you're pushing upwards, the foot can push down. So this goes down, this goes up. Okay, so you're pushing into the ground from here. Okay, so make sure if you're going to use heavy weights in this, keep a spotter behind who can rack the bar back again onto the rack. That's an important aspect. Safety, we've of course got a lecture on this, but safety is paramount because if this bar drops on the neck, it can create a lot of problems. Okay, Now we'll go on to doing this with dumbbells. So here we are with 2 dumbbells now. Now what changes here? Nothing much really, except the fact that the dumbbells allow you a greater arc. So a dumbbell's path, if you check from here, it would allow you to go outwards, down and in the center. Whereas with the barbell, the range is fixed. Okay, the range is of course full, but you cannot move the dumbbells anywhere around. You can't change and get into pronation or supination. Okay, so dumbbells allow you that advantage. That's why they are sometimes a bit more specific to sports, because not every sport requires a huge amount of strength. Okay, some sports require more control. So dumbbells help. Also, one of the advantages of dumbbells is that as you work independently with 2 separate dumbbells, both those dumbbells will be managed by each arm. So occasionally if your left arm is weaker than the right or the other way. So this helps a bit in sort of creating some amount of muscle balance, okay, so that both arms can work together. So let's try this with dumbbells and you will see what I meant by the difference between the bar and this. So one trick is to make sure that you have a real strong grip. Okay, grab it firm. The standard rule for gripping is that when you grab a bar, you have to think you're actually crushing the bar. Okay, you crush it hard and you hold. You don't have a loose grip. If your end point is loose, the bar will be loose in your hand or the dumbbell will be loose. Make sure it's actually very tight, strong. Okay, this will help for sports which are such as tennis, badminton, where grip plays a good role. You can use this indirectly to improve your grip as well. So here you are, you're down. Now as you can see, I can keep this at an angle which a barbell doesn't allow me to. Okay, so again let me show you. First retraction, glutes active, feet pressed, tight move. Okay, from here down. You want to go as straight as possible. Think as if you're throwing a karate punch. Down, punch. Now here there can be slightly different grips. This is what's called a neutral grip, okay, where I'm holding the bars facing each other, holding the dumbbells facing each other. There's something called an overhand grip, which is this, okay, and then you go down and you go up. And there's something called an underhand grip. This type of bench press is very rare. It's a bit old school. Some people tend to do, but in general, you want to do this one. This becomes a good mix between weights, between strength, and also some amount of shoulder mobility during that strength. Okay. Now, one more technique to remember is that, depending on what you want, if you're in the endurance phase of training, and if you're wanting to build more muscle endurance, then you want the reps to be more continuous. So it's 1, no break at the bottom, up, no break at top. So there's what's called the principle of continuous muscle tension. Okay, time under tension is higher here because there's no rest. Now, obviously, if you're going to lift something which is very heavy, let's say these dumbbells were used for strength training, you cannot keep it constant because you need that break. So there it's like 1, wait. So if this was very heavy, then I would wait on top. Okay, this gives me a brief respite. The muscles get a break. Okay, but if you're looking at endurance, it is just down, up, and so on. Okay. So as you can see, now the same variation can be used on the incline bench, on a decline bench. What would that do? If the bench is inclined, it would work a bit more of your upper pec fibers. Okay. What would the decline bench do? It would work the lower pectoralis fibers. Okay. And make sure you read up on anatomy. If you get onto anatomy, you'll notice that the pec major has fibers which are on top, which are more central, and which are at the bottom as well. Okay. So when we look at all these different attachments of the muscles, there's some development that happens if you look at it from an aesthetic point of view. But from looking at it from a sport point of view, if you work at different angles, and especially if this force which is required to be produced upwards Then you can look at the incline bench press. Flat bench press has its own pluses and it has its own drawbacks as well. That from a shoulder health point of view, a flat bench press is not really prescribed. Though it helps you lift a lot more, but for somebody who has maybe injuries, and let's say if there's a tennis player, badminton player, could be a swimmer, okay, who's been having consistent shoulder problems, especially a barbell bench press on this would not be the most recommended. Dumbbells, by now you would have got some idea about how the arm changes and how it mimics action in sport. Whether it's throwing a punch, as you can see, the punch doesn't go just straight. The punch would move from a neutral to an overhead position, okay? Or if it's an uppercut, it goes down. If it's a tennis shot, then from here you serve, you go up, you connect right from behind, external rotation, connect. So this angle changing becomes one of the advantages of using dumbbells, okay? And the more dumbbells you can control with each arm, one arm which is stabilizing and the other arm which is hitting, that gives you that again sort of advantage, okay? So this is about the bench press so far. We'll be moving on to the deadlift as well and getting on to talking about that, but hope the clarity is there. Just to repeat again, the grip, when you grab the bar, make sure that you're grabbing it to almost crush. Think as if it's a grip where you want to wrap your fingers around and use what's called like a towel grip, okay? So if you're holding it, you don't just hold, you go here, grab, and then from here, as you can see, you twist like a towel, okay? So when you hold this grip from here and you twist, okay, the stability is much more, the control over the bar will be much more. You'll feel very stable with this. And make sure everything is switched on. Every joint should be activated. So 1, 2, 3, if you're using these, the scapulae you retract, okay, your hip involved, everything. The more you practice lifting like this with the whole body behind it, the more the translation of that power and that strength into sport. Because in sport, you ultimately want to hit a forehand shot in tennis with your whole body into it. You don't just want to have strong shoulders which just hit without connection. So one important aspect of training is to make sure that even if you do a lift like this, which is not really explosive, make sure that you engage your core. Voluntarily get your core involved into it, voluntarily get your legs involved. Don't let the legs ever sleep in any lift. If you're doing an upper body lift, or if you're doing anything which is even, say, standing lift, upper body, or maybe a squat, your legs are switched on in every lift. If you're doing even bicep curl seated, this is switched on. You press into the ground, activate the core, move. You're not doing any lift whereby you just sort of sit and just do this. Okay, if you're doing a preacher bench and you're just doing this, you're switching off everything. Make it a habit to anchor. Okay, any exercise, anchor, hold, grip, move with the whole body, engage everything. And that is where that power to throw a punch comes in, where you're used to connecting and producing force from that ground reaction, pushing into the floor, producing power. Okay, so that's about the bench. We'll be moving on to the next exercise now.